Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Scotland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, and I think it's fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of sour beers. They are one of the newest additions to the Scottish craft beer scene, but they have become one of the most highly regarded breweries in the country, so it's always nice to try new things from them. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a new addition to one of my favourite series of beers that they do, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out because it's got something in it that you don't find all that often in different beers. So hopefully this is another good one, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head to Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, and we're going to go out to Portobello, close by, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Vault City Brewing. So this particular beer comes from their Farm to Fermenter series. This is the Farm to Fermenter Plum. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and as you've probably guessed by now, this one is a plum sour. So yeah, the idea behind this series is that they get fruits from local farms and get them freshly into one of their sour beers, and that's what they've done here. So yeah, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So the last beer that I reviewed from this series was back in, I want to say like October of 2020, maybe. It was quite a wee while ago actually. Maybe October 2020 it would have been actually. So it's been over a year since I've reviewed something from this series. But that was the Farm to Fermenter Blueberry, and that came through the small partiers here in Sweden through Systembolaget. So it was nice to get a hold of this one when I was back in the motherland of Scotland. And I do have another beer from this series that we'll review in a few videos time as well. If you've seen my kind of unboxing and live streams that I've done in recent times, you might have an idea of what the other one is. But yeah, very curious to try my first plum sour, so hopefully this is a good one. But let's crack on and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vault City Brewing before, and you will definitely see more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite often when I go back home to the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Vault City Brewing. So Vault City Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Edinburgh, and the company was founded back in 2018 by Johnny Horn, Adele Wilkie and Stephen Smith-Hay. So Johnny worked in the Hanging Bat on Lothian Road in the city, and Stephen and Adele were regular customers there, and just over time they all became friends. But Johnny was studying at the time, and he was also a keen home brewer, as was Stephen. But the two began planning a brewery together, and Adele contributed a lot of ideas in the early stages before eventually joining them. But Johnny was a great fan of Belgian lambics and sour beers, and this really started to rub off on Adele and Stephen, and they felt that at this time there was a big gap in the Scottish beer scene for a sour beer brewery, so they decided that that was the route they were going to take, and it has gone very well for them. But initially they didn't think so much about making money, so they set up a glorified home brewing kit as their brewery in Stephen and Adele's kitchen, and they began brewing weekly back in July of 2018. But over the year after that, they had been basically visiting different festivals and spreading the word about their beers, and it really started to take off for them. So they started brewing their beers at 71 Brewing in Dundee, and they spent 16 months up there before relocating to their own purpose-built facility in Portobello near Edinburgh. But during the time in Dundee, Johnny decided that he was going to leave the company to found his own brewery, which he has subsequently called Holy Goat, and you will see them feature on the channel at some point over the next few months. I do have a couple of Holy Goat beers to take a look at. But these days they now have their wee vault bar near Haymarket Station in Edinburgh, and they are just about to open up their own 250-person music venue at their new brewery. So that is something that I will need to go and check out as well. But as of January 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced over 140 different kinds of beer, and that will no doubt increase over the coming months and years. But the brewery itself takes its name, or the company I should say, takes its name from the Edinburgh Southside Vaults, which were built into the arches of the Southside Bridge in Edinburgh. And these were home to various workshops and taverns and things like that. They really wanted to go with a kind of classic Edinburgh name for the brewery. And that is one of the things, actually, the Edinburgh beer scene has really taken off in recent years, with the likes of, Campervan getting a little bit bigger. You've got Moonwake Brewery now, and a few others, and of course Vault City have come into that as well. So Edinburgh has been looking very bright for craft beer, because for a long time it was only really Stewart Brewing that were doing a lot of things, and there was Top Out Brewery as well doing some stuff. Those are probably the two longer term ones. Campervan Brewery were about, but they were very, very small. But that is all I can really tell you about Vault City Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. There you go. As you can see, Vault City Brewing. I can see the bottom of this is a little bit sticky actually. I hope it's not been leaking. But yeah, you can see Vault City Brewing, farm to fermenter plum, 6.5% ABV. And of course you have Vault City on the bottle cap of this one as well. See if it'll focus. There you go. Not sure how that's going on with the light though. But it says on the side here, farm to fermenter plum. Taking inspiration from the farm to table concept, we wanted to shorten the distance between local growers and our delicious modern sour beer. We carefully timed our brewing schedule with the farmer's harvesting window to bring the fruits from farm to fermenter in under 24 hours. So nearly 80k vibrant plums from Peter Marshall Farms made their way into the brewery and into this beer within 16 hours. So that is pretty damn cool actually, I have to say. But yeah, as I say, I really like this kind of concept that they do. The Farm to Fermenter series is always quite nice. And as I say, the last one that we had was the blueberry one. So we need to see if there are going to be any more other than the other one that I have to review in a little while. But as we said, 6.5% ABV. I don't think we can really fit the Vault City Brewing sours into any particular category because they are very unique. You can't call them a Goza or a Berliner Weisse or anything like that. But they do contain wheat and oats, so they are usually quite creamy and big. But yeah, 375ml bottle. This one, I believe this cost me like £6.50. So that translates to roughly what's that going to be, about 85 Swedish kroner, something like that. So about €8.50, somewhere in the region of about $10 or something like that for this bottle. So for a sour beer, no bad actually. I don't mind paying that for the Vault City things because they are pretty good. But this was bought at the Wee Vault in Haymarket along with the lemonade one that you've already seen me review and the other farm to fermenter that you'll see me review later. But let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Should also add that this beer was bought on a day out that I had with John from John Drinks. There was a wee bit of excitement with this one. You can see just a little bit of bubbles coming out the top there. Yeah, my hand got a little bit wet, but let's just be careful and put the rest of this into the glass. There we go. Ooh, now this is interesting. I have to admit, I would have thought that this beer would have been a little bit different in colour to this one, but let's just pour it carefully and see how we go, because obviously this one has been a little bit exciting. Maybe I will have to review the other one fairly soon as well, but let's just see how much of this have we got left. There's still a fair wee bit of that in the bottom. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get that out once the head on this calms down a little bit. But yeah, this one obviously was a little bit excited when we've poured it. So anyway, Yeah, as you can see, this beer is poured with a pretty massive head, about 2 fingers, and I would say that it is actually a kind of slightly creamy coloured head there, but it does have a wee bit of a kind of colour tint to it. And when it comes to a sort of fruity beer like this, that is to be expected. But I have to say, I am very surprised about the colour of this one, because plums normally, obviously plums give you this beautiful purple colour normally. So I'm a little bit surprised that this one is the colour that it is, because to be honest with you, it's a little bit more like a kind of mixed tropical fruit juice colour. I did not expect that from it at all. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in, such as fruit, will affect the colour too, and any barley aging that you do can affect it as well. So in the case of sour beers, we do have to care about this. But there's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does seem pretty nice actually. But yeah, you can see the level of haze in this one is pretty damn good. So yeah, very impressively hazy. Quite a few little bits of sediment floating around in this one, but yeah, the haze in this one will be due to the kind of oat and wheat content, but yeah, it looks pretty nice. So as I've explained to you in previous sour beer reviews, and particularly Vault City ones, for me, the thing is with these beers, I often find that the aroma profile and the flavour profile is really quite straightforward. I don't find these modern Gozes and Berliner Weisses, or as I say, Vault Cities are quite unique, these modern sour beers, I don't find them to be the most overly complex beers like, the Flanders Reds or whatever, or some of the Lambics, but they're just really, really nicely done. If you get a nicely done sour beer, it can just be absolutely beautiful. It can be a really nice drinking experience. And Vault City, on pretty much every beer I've had from them, have delivered that. There's only been 1 or 2 where it's been a little bit of a kind of pastry sour that I've not been such a massive fan, I have to say. But yeah, the ones that are straight up fruit sours like this usually tend to be pretty damn good. But yeah, the head on this one is definitely persisting, so we'll just need to see how we go with it. But appearance wise, really just surprised that this one isn't a little bit more kind of purple, to be honest with you. So yeah, my very first plum sour. Learn something new every day. I'll need to look out another plum sour and see if that's always the case. Yeah, we do need to make a plum wine sour for Mr. Raggy down in Nottingham in England. Yeah, plum, the proverbial plum wine. But yeah, nice looking beer, this one. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go with it, if we can get through that head. Yeah, just see. Now, I'm going to say, compared to some of the other Vault City beers that I've had, aroma-wise, this one comes across as quite a little bit sharper, which is interesting. So the plums must be really quite big and sharp in this one. So that's really interesting from a start, because normally, in my experience, the Vault City sours always have this nice balance between being big and creamy underneath, but then having a very juicy fruity character and sometimes just a little bit of tartness. This one certainly has just really leans a little bit more towards the tart side of things for... These really lean more towards the kind of tart side of things in comparison to the in comparison to some of the other Vault City ones that we've had. So yeah, this is interesting. But yeah, underneath, I mean, you certainly get a wee bit of that kind of petit filou. You get a wee bit of that kind of petit filou yogurty type thing that I'll often talk about with these Vault City sours. You are getting a few other little fruity characters in there, a wee touch of a candied strawberry, candied kind of raspberry sort of things as well. But I will say, for me, plum is not a fruit that I'm overly used to, if that makes sense. So that's maybe part of the reason why I'm getting some of these subtleties. But you can certainly smell that big, juicy, plummy note out of it. And, the plummy aroma is actually quite different. It's actually got a good little bit of a dry, fruity character to it. In some ways, if I was smelling this blind, I might think that this was something along the lines of like strawberry and apricot or something like that. So I'm quite surprised by the plummy aromas out of this, and it has almost a wee touch of a kind of vinous type quality to it as well, like a sort of white winey type note. So that is, for me, that's really interesting. So yeah, maybe that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get this beer, because as far as I can remember, I've never had a plum sour. So this is a learning experience for me, and that's what this channel is all about, is being a learning experience, me documenting and learning about beer. And after 3,200 reviews, you want beers like this that are going to test you a little bit, and this one's certainly doing that. So yeah, as I say, nice kind of oaty, creamy backbone, but that petit filou yogurt in there. You can smell a little bit of white bread and bread crust in there as well, but that takes a back seat. But yeah, quite petit filou yogurt like, and as I say, the kind of fruitiness that you're getting in the yogurt is quite it's like a combination of like an apricot, a kind of candied raspberry and strawberry, but also white winey type quality. So yeah, I do like how this one, I do like how it goes together actually. So yeah, this is really interesting. Now the thing as well with Vault City beers is that they always have a little bit of hop in them, and this one does as well. Now I've talked about this in various sour beer reviews. Quite a few of the sour breweries here in Sweden don't put hops in their beers, and it kind of goes either way. I mean, I think hops kind of balances the beers in a slightly different way, but the ones that don't have the hops tend to be very, very sweet actually. But that can be very nice too. These big sweet Nordic Berliner Weisses and Goses, Duck Pond Brewing and breweries like that for Fermenter here in Sweden are very good at these kind of things. Coolhead over in Finland as well. But yeah, you can certainly smell a good little bit of green component out of this. There's a wee touch of earthiness in there, quite a bright floral aromaticity I would say as well, and just a little lighter touch of grassiness. And in terms of oily fruits, yeah, in terms of oily fruits, this one, as I say, is quite nice. I find it quite zesty actually. I'm really just surprised by the plummy characters in this one. Certainly quite sharp and tart in a lot of ways, but yeah, this beer for me is really quite interesting in a lot of ways. It's definitely one that's tested the nose and tested the and I'm sure it'll test the palate as well, I should say. So yes, I always say take a bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. Let me just see how much of this we've got left. That was only like a teeny little bit, we'll just put it in before we taste it. But yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, let me just pour the last little bit of this carefully. And there we are. So there we go. Perfect pour. Yeah, pretty much no sediment left in this. So maybe the sediment was a little bit active in this one, of course. That's all your leftover yeast and things like that. So yeah, just be careful with that, the sour beers. In fairness, I've never seen a Vault City one do this before though. So maybe it has been sitting for a little bit. It says the 3rd of August 2023. So yeah, maybe something to do with that. But yeah, let's have a taste of this then and see how we go. So the Farm to Fermenter Plum, 6.5% ABV from Vault City Brewing in Portobello near Edinburgh. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. Yeah. That's interesting. That really is interesting. Sour plums. Yeah, that's, as I say, the plum flavour is familiar, but the aroma isn't. So yeah, the flavour is, for me, the flavour's a lot more relatable than the aroma was. So it's kind of interesting. But I will say having sour plums is a bit different. Although we do have a sweet in Scotland that's quite famous, sour plums. So maybe it's maybe they'll do a sour, knowing what Vault City like to do. A sour plume sour would be quite an interesting one from these guys as well. But this beer, for me, if you're watching in Scotland, you will know the sweet sour plumes. It really tastes like that. So that's interesting. But like I say, I'm just surprised at the colour of this as well. But it's nice. Again, you never get a bad beer from Vault City in my experience, and the only one that I haven't been such a great fan of was a pastry sour. So, and I'm not convinced of that style, generally speaking. But yeah, this one is very, very nice. Yeah, I will say for me, the plums are having plums in the sour is a little bit unusual in a sense, but I think it's nice. This is one of these beers where you try it, and it does take your mouth a wee bit of time to adjust to it, because it's quite an unusual one for sure. I would definitely stick with that and say that it's quite an unusual beer. So just, bear in mind with this one that bear in mind with this one that you want to have you need to go into this beer with an open mind, I think, because having a plum sour is a little bit more unusual and quirky. But in terms of you can tell straight away with it that it's a really well brewed beer. It's good quality, and it's up to the standards that you would expect of Vault City. So here's a thumbs up from me. This is one of these ones that I'm just going to have to, sip on and just try and get used to it a little bit more. But let's try and break it down and describe the flavour a wee bit more, as we always do. So as I've said, for me, this one is one of the sharper ones that I've had from Vault City, but it's not like cloying or anything like this. And it does have that typical juiciness and smoothness in the sour character that you will always associate with Vault City. So it's definitely in keeping with their vibe, if that makes sense. But let's go through this beer on the thirds of the palate as we always do. So middle third of your palate, then you can feel that nice smooth bready character just blanketing the middle of your palate there. I wouldn't even say there's any bread crust to this one. It's got a lovely smooth white bready character there from the barley malt. That forms the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you can feel the wheat just thickening it out a little bit. So you do have a fair little bit of a dense but still quite smooth and fluffy white bready character in there. And then on top of that, you've got a nice kind of smooth, oaty, creamy character to it. So I like how that goes together in this one for sure. You've got that lovely big oaty, smooth, creamy sort of thing. Yeah, love it. And it does, it has that wee bit of the petit filou yogurt sort of thing to it. I mean, those of you watching in Scotland, my mum always used to buy me Munch Bunch yogurts for my lunchbox when I was a wee boy. So the yogurty feel that you get in these Vault City beers really reminds me of that. And the base in this one, like I say, it has a bit more, it reminds me of the apricot one, the orangey yellow one. So yeah, it really reminds me of the sort of yogurty base that you get in this beer really reminds me of that. So yeah, as I say, thick white, soft fluffy white bread, the wheat thickening it out, the smooth oaty creamy characters, and then on top of that you get that sort of petit filou yogurty type thing. And then sitting on top of that, I do actually get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy sweetness out of this one. There is a wee touch of like brown sugar in this beer, but not overly much. But the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it gives you that apricot-y, yogurty type vibe to it. Yeah, as I say, it is very nice, actually, in that sense. I do like that. It's, as I say, you've got that Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing, which starts, and as you further you go into the aftertaste, it takes a bit of a back seat to that kind of yogurty sort of thing that it has. And as I say, it's a little bit of a combination of an apricot-y flavour, and then obviously it's plum, but the way I'm perceiving it, it's like an apricot-y base, pardon me, then it's like a bit of a kind of sharper strawberry raspberry kind of thing on top of that. So it's interesting how this beer, the aroma really plays out in the flavour. But I think we've covered everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate, so let's focus on the back third of your tongue then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, on top of that you have a nice little bit of bread crusty kind of build there. You can feel that, but then the back third of the palate, the base of the beer is pretty much the same. So Sitting on top of that, you've got a wee bit of a kind of, you get a wee touch of a bread crusty note there. Obviously, more bitter flavours come out further back on the palate. So yeah, there is a wee bit of a bread crusty type vibe there. On top of that, you get a thicker white bread. You can feel the wheat in there as well, thickening that out. So that layer with the barley malt and the wheat is a lot thicker. And then on top of that, you get a wee bit of the yeasty character in there. And that feels a little bit more like a kind of crackery white bread. So you can feel that layer sitting on top of everything else actually. So I do like how that goes together in this one. That gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, I do like how all of that. Goes together in this one. So that gets a thumbs up from me as well. So yeah, the flavour on the back third of your palate is taller, but then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just condenses down and squashes together that wee bit more, as you always do. But it's interesting, the further you go into the aftertaste with that middle third of the palate, it does have a wee bit of that kind of white wine vinessy type quality. It's really interesting, and that comes out a wee bit more further towards the kind of front half of that middle third of your palate. So that's interesting as well. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you do have a little teeny bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal. Then as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a little bit more of a kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, nice big kind of floral aromaticity for sure. But not overly, I mean, it's not overly, but you can feel it's a little bit, you do get just a little bit of bitterness out of this beer, but then round the front curve of the palate, it's got a bit of a lighter, grassy sort of thing. And the grassiness, in fairness, does actually have a wee bit of zestiness to it as well, which is quite interesting. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the nice kind of fruity side of things. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, front third of your palate then. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a bread crusty thing there. Then the base of that front third of your palate, has a nice smooth white bready character there. And then on top of that, of course, you're getting all the fruity kind of things. So yeah, I like how that. I do like how that goes together in this one for sure. So it's interesting, as I say, I'm not so used to plum flavours on their own. Or the aroma, indeed. But it's a bit more familiar in that sense, actually. I'm surprised at how, even on that front third of your palate, you do have this almost like white wine type quality just sitting on top of the kind of oaty base on the front third of your palate. But then, yeah, you get that more juicy, red, fruity, kind of plummy type quality there. It reminds me a little bit of sultanas in some way as well. So like a white wine sultana, but then you've also got that little bit more of a kind of red, fruity vibe to plum as well. So yeah, for me, I'm surprised because the plum that I get out of this, normally when I try, like Doppelbocks and Scotch ales and stuff like that, the plums are a lot more oily. But in this beer, when they're on their own, they come across as a little bit more dry and sultana-like. So it's more like to me, it's interesting because this, if I remember rightly, it's dates are, is it not you call dates just dried plums? But it really has a little bit more of a kind of dried fruity character, and that's when you get that, white wine vinous and sultana sort of thing going on with this one. It's like that apricot base, but with the raspberry or strawberry tartness on top. The whole plum flavour for me is a little bit of an unknown, and it's quite interesting. So this is definitely not going to be my best review in terms of sheerly describing the flavours for you. This is me just trying to wrap my head around how plums actually come across in a sour. But yeah, this beer, from the fruity side of things for me, front third of your palate, it's got like a, white green grapey, white wine vinous sort of base to it. At the back of the front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of like a sultana, datey, dried fruity kind of vibe. On top of that, you get a little bit more of the oily character from the plums, a little bit of that red fruity sort of thing. But then as you move further forward onto the front half of the palate, I get a little bit of that sort of oily apricot-y thing that I was talking about. It feels a little bit like that. And then on top of that, you do get a little bit of the kind of tartness, which is interesting. And it's almost a little bit like a teeny, tiny little bit of raspberry. Now, I'm mentioning all these different fruits, but this is the plum flavour. I will be clear about that. These flavours that I'm talking about, these are all associated with the plums. I'm not saying there's all these different fruits in it. This is me just trying to wrap my head around exactly what the plum flavour is, because I'm not that used to it. So let's just be very clear on that. But I think that kind of describes, that's my sort of perception of this beer, actually. So obviously plums on their own in a sour beer, they'll give you a wee bit of a white winey character, a sultana, an apricot-y kind of thing. Like they've got a big dried fruity character apparently, but there's a wee bit of red fruit in there as well. So this, I would just say overall, this beer has been a really interesting experience. I think that's fair to say. The blueberry farm to fermenter was a lot more familiar to me. I've had blueberry sours before. This one is just a bit of an unknown, but that's why I bought it. I wanted something that was going to test my palate, and this has certainly done that, I would say. So I hope for you guys watching this review has kind of made sense, because it to me it feels a little bit more like a ramble rather than what I normally do. But hey ho, all the reviews can't be perfect, you know. But yeah, regardless, it's a very nice beer, and as I say, I'm still surprised that this thing isn't kind of purple like that, but that's it, that's another thing. So anyway, let's round off this review with a look at the mouthfeel. I don't think we can really say anything more about the flavour, to be honest. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, it's pretty much as you would expect from Vault City. It's kind of bottom end to full body for me, but definitely, you know, one of the generally speaking, it's bottom end to full body, but for a sour beer, it's pretty damn thick. The carbonation is pretty smooth. It's got a bit of an oily mouthfeel, but at the same time, it's quite creamy. You often get this kind of thing. The Vault City beers are quite unique in that certain sense. In terms of IBUs, I think this will be a sort of 10-15 IBU beer. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of its hoppiness and things. But yeah, the malt base, as we said, is very, very smooth and very creamy and quite thick. There's a slight degree of sweetness to it as well. And the fruity part of the beer, it's got a bit of dryness to it. There's a little bit of vinous quality, and obviously you've got a bit of oiliness in there as well. But you also have a tartness to this beer that comes out, and I feel the tartness in this beer actually mixes in with a slightly floral and grassy, zesty, hoppy side of the beer too. But yeah, this beer, for me, it has been a big learning experience. Now that I've had a plum sour, I'm sure I will enjoy the next plum sour I have a little bit more, because I know a little bit more what to expect. But regardless of that, this is another very, very well executed beer by Vault City, and it's definitely up to their standards. So yeah, potentially not the best review for me, but I hope that you guys enjoyed it nonetheless. But yeah, this was the Farm to Fermenter Plum, 6.5% sour beer, fruit sour I guess we have to call it, from Vault City Brewing in Portobello near Edinburgh. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vault City, and we will of course return to these guys again in the near future. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in the next one. This has been awesome to review this, my very first plum sour beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.